They told you that order was kindness, that structure was safety, that the walls were there to keep the wolves out. You nodded because you were tired, and the world outside the walls looked like teeth. You walked the corridors of duty with a quiet pride, convinced that keeping your head down was a kind of wisdom. But what if the first conquest was never territory? It was belief. What if the chains arrived as lullabies? You live in a civilization that doesn't bark commands. It hums. It speaks the soft language of invoices, deadlines, compliances, and performance reviews. Obedience wasn't discovered. It was engineered, layer by layer, until compliance felt like conscience and conformity felt like care. In the shadows of high windows, the few realized an old truth. Force is costly, but stories are cheap. The whip raises rebellion. The slogan raises revenue. Here's the part no one dares to admit. The most efficient prison has no visible bars. It has routines, paydays, holidays marked on calendars like little sugar cubes. It has swipes, badges, onboarding, wellness initiatives, comforts designed to anesthetize the question that once tried to wake you. Who benefits most from this peace? You accept a smaller life in exchange for predictable instructions and call it maturity. You trade the volatility of freedom for the stability of obedience and call it adulthood. You become fluent in the grammar of approval, on time, on brand, on message, and the doors open for you. But where do they lead? Back into corridors, back into cycles, back into a tunnel whose lights shine so evenly, you stop asking where the exit is. And in that silence, the truth whispers. Machiavelli understood the shape of human fear. He knew that crowds crave certainty more than justice, calm more than glory, a narrative more than a nuance. So the rulers of your century refined an ancient art. Rename the cage. Call. Taxation a duty, surveillance a service, austerity prudence, layoffs optimization. Change the word and you gaslight the wound. Pain becomes policy. Restriction becomes reform. But what if I work hard, Monsieur, you ask? Doesn't hard work lift me? Work matters. It moves the world. But hard work becomes a leash when it is severed from leverage. When the reward is calibrated to keep you obedient, your labor is tamed into a ritual, predictable, dependable, and ultimately replaceable. You are praised for your grind because your grind is safe. It doesn't threaten the blueprints. The paradox is simple and cruel. You feel free because you can choose within the tunnel. You can choose your desk plant, your app theme, your ergonomic chair. You can decorate the leash, but the tunnel remains. The ceiling of possibilities was designed long before you entered, set by people who learned that the best way to win is to be the one who sets the rules, not the one who plays the game beautifully. And yet, the truth is darker. Obedience is not merely enforced, it's volunteered. You trade your uncertainty for a script because uncertainty is a heavy thing to carry alone. And scripts soothe. They tell you where to stand, how to talk, when to laugh, when to applaud. The most dangerous moment is when you mistake the script for your identity, the corridor for your calling, the ceiling for the sky. And in that silence, the truth whispers. You are not guilty for wanting calm, but you are responsible for noticing who profits from your peace. The architecture of obedience begins as a kindness and hardens into an inheritance, a culture that punishes ambiguity, a bureaucracy that rewards docility, a market where price signals become moral signals. The clerk who never questions becomes the supervisor who trains others not to. The student who learns compliance becomes the citizen who votes for it. Here's the part you already feel in your bones. The most obedient people are not the weakest, they're the busiest. Exhaustion is a governance strategy. Keep the masses too tired for philosophy, too entertained for inquiry, too anxious for risk, and you will never need to take their freedom. They will spend it themselves little by little in the name of being responsible. But what if you step back, What if you refuse the sedation of approval and begin to map the incentives that keep the tunnel lit? The awakening isn't rage, it's orientation. You start to see which words are veils, which praises are leashes, which duties are feasts for someone else's table. You stop worshipping the corridor. You start asking who built it. And in that silence, the truth whispers. Obedience was invented the moment power learned that the human mind longs for shelter. The question is not whether shelter is wrong. The question is whether the roof is worth the rent of your sight. A note of paper, a digit in a ledger, a logo stitched into ordinary leather, and suddenly it becomes sacred. You have been living inside a theater where belief converts fabric into status and attention into gold. Money is not discovered like ore in a mountain. Money is written on contracts, on screens, in the collective imagination of a crowd that has forgotten its own authorship. The rich do not sell products, they sell positions. Scarcity is staged. Drops are choreographed. Waiting lists are engineered to gamify longing. And the masses play along, not because they are foolish, but because humans are tribe-seeking creatures who will pay dearly for signals of belonging. It isn't the bag you buy. It's the invitation to a room where a certain nod means you're seen. But what if value isn't a reflection of utility? What if it is a reflection of leverage? A brand declares a story the market can't argue with. An institution declares a credential the market can't ignore. A platform declares an algorithm the market can't see. And suddenly price is no longer a conversation. It is a verdict. Those who control the stamp control the spread. Here's the part no one dares to admit. Poverty often follows a failure to control the illusion, not a failure to create the useful. The teacher who shapes minds earns little because her value is slow and quiet, hard to package, hard to flip. The influencer who performs glamour earns much because the theater is immediate, loopable, monetizable by the platform that rents the stage. This is not a moral judgment. It's a structural observation. Alchemy favors visibility over essence, and those who own the spotlight decide whose light counts. And in that silence, the truth whispers. Consider the auction room where a painting sells for a fortune because two men refuse to lose to each other. Consider the startup whose valuation soars on a story of eventual dominance, even though profit is a distant rumor. Consider the neighborhoods rebaptized as districts, where the same bricks now signal a new tribe. Money bends to narrative. Narrative bends to power. Power bends the laws of scarcity. And yet, the truth is darker. The alchemists don't merely tell stories. They get to set the terms under which stories become balance sheets. Central banks, rating agencies, index committees, and credentialing bodies form an invisible legislature of value. When they reclassify, reweight, or revise, entire livelihoods rise or sink with a keystroke. The product didn't change. The blessing changed. But what if you learned to watch for the blessing instead of the object? What if you traced value to the gate that confers it? You would see that the crucial skill is not manufacturing, it's positioning. Not noise, distribution. Not features, framing. Control the pipeline by which desire flows, and you can rent every dream that passes through it. Here's the practical heresy. Utility is necessary, narrative is decisive. The masses pour labor into utility and hope that someone notices. The few pour labor into narrative and ensure they cannot be ignored. The masses focus on the item, the few control the context. This is not advice to deceive. It is instruction to understand the mechanics of belief, because every economy is an ecosystem of perceptions, and the apex predators are those who design the habitat. And in that silence, the truth whispers. Stop asking whether something says arrives its price. Start asking who has the power to set it. Stop assuming that the market rewards the most useful. Start mapping which hands hold the levers that define useful. When you see this, your relationship with money changes. You stop being scandalized by spectacles and start building your own channels. You stop fighting for crumbs at the table and learn how tables are reserved. Machiavelli would say, do not confuse virtue with valuation. Value is a procession, and the drumbeat is composed by those who own the instruments. If you want to rise, don't run faster toward the stage. Become the sound engineer. And in that silence, the truth whispers. Power survives not because of charisma, but because of structure. The world is a map of gates: distribution, credentialing, enforcement. Control one and you have influence. Control all three and the game plays itself in your favor. Distribution is the bloodstream. Who carries the thing you need to the place you need it? If they carry it, they can tax it. If they can tax it, they can slow you until you sell. Credentialing is the crown. Who decides what counts as real, safe, qualified? If they approve you, doors open. If they don't, you become a rumor. Enforcement is the shadow. Who can say no without consequence?
If they can, your brilliance is negotiable. Here's the part no one dares to admit. Systems don't care how good you are. They care whether you are routed.
A genius behind a gate is a ghost. A mediocrity plugged into the pipeline is a personality. The few understand this, so they buy bottlenecks. They turn rivals into vendors, critics into subcontractors, independents into dependents. They don't crush your voice. They market it with a fee. But what if you studied the city the way engineers study a grid? You would stop arguing with opinions and start tracing pipes. Which platforms stand between creators and audiences? Which wholesalers stand between growers and shelves? Which payment networks stand between customers and your account? The answer will tell you where the tolls are. Those tolls are not villains. They are simply the architecture of the few, quiet, durable, and profitable. And in that silence, the truth whispers. Regulation, often sold as protection, also becomes a moat. Standards that keep out the dangerous also keep out the uninvited. Compliance, sold as fairness, also becomes friction that only the capitalized can absorb. The powerful love complexity, because complexity is a tax you pay in time and attention, the two currencies you can't replenish. If you feel permanently late, permanently behind, permanently waiting for permission, that's not an accident. It's a design. And yet, the truth is darker. Even noble institutions become gatekeepers when maintenance becomes their mission. Once a body can certify, it can charge. Once it can charge, it can entrench. Over time, guardians drift toward owners. What begins as stewardship curdles into control. Strategy then is unsentimental. Map the gates. Partner with a gate you cannot bypass. Build a gate where none exists, but demand will soon require it. Fragment a rival's gate by offering parallel paths, by modular. Rising by open sourcing just enough to weaken their toll without diluting your advantage. Understand that in a world of gates, the most valuable asset is the right to decide who waits. But what if you don't own a gate? Then you must become anti-fragile. Multiple suppliers, multiple platforms, multiple credentials. Redundancy is not paranoia. It is the mathematics of dignity in an age of choke points. Your independence is measured in how many no's you can hear without starving, and in that silence, the truth whispers. Machiavelli would remind you, it is not enough to be loved or feared, you must be positioned. Position is the art of arranging incentives so that others cannot defect without pain. When your partners are your captives, and your captives feel like partners, you have built the invisible throne, the architecture that outlives any single face. This is why power is never shared. It is lent on terms that ensure eventual return. The handshake is ceremony. The contract is sovereignty. To rise, you must stop worshipping personalities and begin reading blueprints. And in that silence, the truth whispers. If architecture is the skeleton, narrative is the skin. It is how power looks beautiful while it binds. Frames decide who is hero, who is threat, and what counts as normal. The few understand this and invest fortunes not merely in facts, but in frames, because frames outlive facts. Facts pass. Frames persist. News cycles, brand stories, thought leadership, curated feeds, each is a stage where the plot is the product. A strike becomes disruption. Surveillance becomes personalization. Austerity becomes prudence. The same act, reframed, becomes a public service. When the story fits, outrage dissolves into acceptance. This is not magic. It is repetition. But what if you expect truth to arrive unframed? You will be disappointed. Humans cannot see without lenses. The choice is not whether to wear one, but which lens and who polished it. Power's favorite trick is to offer only two, fear or fatigue. Fear subdues the rebel. Fatigue neutralizes the philosopher. If both are available, the few will dose the crowd with whichever maintains the calm. Here's the part no one dares to admit. Censorship no longer needs a jackboot. It can smile, call itself curation, and bury inconvenient realities under 10,000 distractions. Drown meaning in data, drown memory in speed, and the crowd will forget the sentence before it finishes. Short attention is not a glitch. It is governance. And in that silence, the truth whispers. And yet, the truth is darker. Even leaks and scandals are metabolized by the narrative machine. The system now anticipates its own exposures and frames them as anomalies, mistakes, miscommunications. A bad apple here, a rogue there, never the orchard. The public is soothed by the myth that monsters are rare, when in fact the mechanism is ordinary. Ordinary incentives, ordinary neglect, ordinary greed with validation. So how do the few maintain dominance? They manufacture normal. They make excess look efficient and dissent look unhinged. They saturate the fee. But until objectors feel alone. The lonely soon self-censor. The chorus grows. Consensus, once achieved, is a holy thing. It polices itself. And soon, no one needs to ban what no one dares to say. But what if you train your eye to notice frames? You stop fighting over plot points and start asking who's casting the roles. You learn to hear the advertised villain and ask who profits from his shadow. You resist the emotional bait that drags you into battles choreographed for someone's metrics. You become unreadable, and unreadable people are unprofitable to manipulators. And in that silence, the truth whispers. Machiavellian awareness does not mean becoming cruel. It means becoming clear. It means learning to detach emotion from evaluation, to pause before you share outrage, to weigh claims not by volume but by consequences. Power speaks in predictions because predictions pre-justify control. The righteous emergency is a lever. Demand the receipts, demand timelines, demand who pays, who gains, who decides when temporary ends. The theater will continue. Let it. But step out of the crowd. When you stop clapping reflexively, the show loses heat. When you stop auditioning for roles written for your obedience, your days uncoil. You will not be celebrated for this, but you will regain the thing every narrative hunts first, your attention. And in that silence, the truth whispers. Dawn. The world looks the same, but you do not. The corridors are still lit. The brands still glow. The gates still hum with cues. But something in you has stepped back, as if from a painting, and seen the frame. The awakening is not fireworks. It is a rearrangement of sight. Here's the part no one dares to admit. Outrage is a kind of entertainment. It feels like motion. It looks like courage. But until you translate anger into architecture, you remain a character in someone else's story. Passionate, predictable, and powerless. The rich don't play harder. They play colder. They schedule their ruthlessness and automate their empathy. They keep their feelings for their families and their focus for their leverage. But what if you did the same? without cruelty, with clarity. Begin with inventory. What dependencies own you? Platforms, employers, clients, licenses, habits. Which single point of failure could starve your future? Build redundancy first. Multiple skills that travel. Multiple channels you control. Multiple reputations that don't hinge on a single gate's mood. Independence is measured not by what you own, but by how many levers can be pulled against you before you fold. And in that silence, the truth whispers. Next, reposition. Proximity to spectacle feels like success, but it is proximity to distribution that pays. Followers are noise. Ownership of the pipe is signal. If you must choose, choose the pipe. Choose the boring lane that tolls the traffic others create. The applause is someone else's drug. Become the pharmacist. And yet, the truth is darker. The moment you build leverage, you will be tempted to become the thing you escaped. You will feel the magnet of ease, the subtle pleasure of people asking permission from you. This is the moral ice of awakening. You must decide whether to replicate the hierarchy or to design a smaller dominion with reversible dependencies, for yourself and perhaps for those who travel through your gate. Strategy is a sequence, not a slogan. Map the gates in your industry. Identify the narrative that legitimizes them. Decide which gate you will partner with, which you will root around, and which you will quietly build. Set terms that resist drift. Transparency that stays sharp. Pricing that reflects risk. Agreements that assume human forgetfulness. Power erodes in the open and multiplies in the dark. So hold your plans in silence, but write your contracts in light. But what if application feels cold? Let it. Warmth belongs to your friendships, your art, your faith, your private rituals. Cold belongs to your decisions. The union of both is not hypocrisy, it is adulthood. The world will call you calculating. They used to call you compliant. Choose the insult that feeds your future. And in that silence, the truth whispers. You do not need to conquer the city. Build a room where you cannot be cheaply cornered. Build a circle that shares information faster than institutional narratives can sedate it. Build a rhythm that starves exhaustion and nourishes thought. In time, you will discover that power's cold mercy is this. It respects those who respect themselves enough to design. Machiavelli would tell you to expect resistance. Those who benefit from your obedience will call your clarity betrayal. Those who sold you the corridor will call your exit disloyalty. This is the cost of return. When the tunnel no longer defines you, you stop needing its lights. Now the final step, detachment without indifference. You engage with calm. You negotiate without hunger. You accept that some doors require tribute you will never pay, and you walk away without burning. This is not cynicism. It is conservation of will. And in that silence, the truth whispers. Power is never shared, but the self who sought it changes. You learn that the only dominion you can truly own is over your attention, your reactions, your designs. Control is not a throne. It is a posture, quiet, patient, exact. The few will remain in their towers. Let them. Your work is to make your life ungovernable by their whims, and in that silence the truth whispers. You have seen the corridor for what it is, a tunnel with kind lighting. You have felt how value is crowned, not found, how gates decide which lives become headlines, which remain footnotes. You have learned that outrage is confetti, and leverage is the law. If you've come this far, you already feel the shift. You are less tempted by applause, less frightened by silence. You can stand at the edge of the city and hear the hum for what it is, a lullaby asking you to sleep. But you didn't. So stay. Keep thinking. Keep watching. Because awareness is a tool only when you return to it. Each time you listen, the frames loosen. Each time you return, your posture steadies. This is not entertainment. It is practice. Subscribe, not for content, but for consciousness. Not for noise, but for a circle that chooses clarity over comfort, design over drift. This is more than a channel. It's a quiet rebellion against the theater that sells you yourself. If you're ready to hold your life with a colder mercy and a warmer heart, step into the silence with us.